and welcome to our Starting Out in Law Masterclass. So this is our second masterclass of the autumn term schedule. We've got a great panel and a lot to get through, so we hope that you enjoy this masterclass and get involved in the conversation. So we always start our masterclasses with our learning outcomes. So by the end of this masterclass, you should have a clear idea of what a solicitor does, feel confident in knowing what to do in your first year at university or at sixth form, and understand what a vacation scheme, training contract or solicitor apprenticeship is, and also understand how and when to apply for firms and get some work experience. And before we get going, I'm just going to quickly run through some key information about the masterclass. So firstly, please use the online question tool to post any questions that you have, and I'll be posting them to our speakers at the end. I'll also try to keep an eye out if any relevant ones come up during our conversation too. So yeah, please use this tool to let us know if you've also got any audio visual problems, and then we'll be happy to help. And please note this masterclass is recorded, and the recording of the session will be sent to all registrants after the session in a follow-up email, and then it'll be available on our YouTube channel shortly as well. And feel free to post about the masterclass on social media and tag us. And finally, we have so many fantastic masterclasses coming up over the autumn term, so please check out the Law Careers Net events page for all the masterclasses we're running this term. Our next one is next Thursday and is all about understanding the work of intellectual property lawyers. We'll cover the types of clients that you might deal with and how you might break into this particular area of law. We have a jam-packed masterclass schedule, so keep your eye out on the LCN events page and your emails as well for details about all the upcoming masterclasses. Okay, so I'm just going to start off by asking all the attendees to answer the question on the screen so the panelists can get an idea of who is joining us today. See, that's quite a lot of you answered now, so I'm just going to share these results. So it seems there's around 30% of sixth form students and 30% first year law students, which is great. And we've also got some people in non-law, some non-law students and people in postgraduate and work. Great, thank you. And I would like to run just one more poll to ask, what's your biggest question about starting a legal career? Are you wondering what you need to do to set yourself for success? How to get work experience? Are you wondering what law firms look for? How to choose a specialization/practice area? How to stand out in your applications, or something else? Just going to share these results as well. Seems majority of you would like, were most interested in knowing how to stand out in applications, how to get work experience, and also how to set yourself up for success. And that's a lot of the stuff we'll be discussing today, so stay tuned. Great, so with this out of the way, I think we can go ahead and get started. And firstly, I would like to ask each panelist to introduce themselves. So I'm just going to go off of who's in order of my screen. So Patrick, can you please go first?
Yeah, sure. Hi everyone. I'm Patrick. I'm one of the recruiters at Osborne Clarke, and I look after our paralegal and support the running of our grad recruitment.
Thank you. And Daniel?
Hi everyone, my name's Daniel and I'm a trainee solicitor at Clyde Co in Northern Ireland.
Thank you. And Fran?
Hi everyone, so my name's Fran. I work in the recruitment team in early careers at Addleshaw Goddard. So my main responsibility is recruiting our trainees for our England offices, so in our London, Leeds and Manchester offices.
Thank you. And last but not least, Tiff?
Hi everyone, I'm Tiff. I'm the early careers specialist at Lewis Silkin. So my main responsibility is recruiting our solicitor apprentices in our London office and also our trainees in our London, Manchester, Belfast and Cardiff office.
Perfect, thank you very much all. And yes, so let's just jump straight into the first section, which is all about starting out and your first year strategy. So Patrick, if I start with you, what do students need to know about pursuing a legal career? For example, what does a solicitor do?
So I guess in terms of what a solicitor does, to sort of really simplify it, they effectively just help clients solve their problems, whether that's disputes between two parties, whether that's supporting funding for a project or, getting a deal across the line. And effectively, it's just taking that sort of complex, the complex sort of law and, turning it into sort of clear and practical advice for their clients. I guess in terms of, the areas they work across, I mean, there's a whole breadth. So, everything from sort of corporate to commercial to real estate, finance, regulation. I mean, it goes on and on. So I guess, it's really, if you've got an interest in a particular area, there's probably something that lines up within the legal sector. And I guess, a solicitor itself, it just brings in lots of parts of other jobs into sort of one role. So, they're project managers, they deal with marketing, they deal with risk, they deal with, advisory things. And, so it's a whole load of roles in one. I guess in terms of, understanding, is it for you? I think it's probably about thinking about what skills you've got. There's certain skills which run across all of our lawyers, regardless of what area they're in. So whether that's, being analytical, being super organized, that attention to detail piece, they're things that really sort of flow throughout our lawyers. And I guess probably one of the things that I would say, if you're thinking about it, is it's an ongoing learning process. So if you enjoy learning, throughout your traineeship into qualification and on, it's a continuous learning process, new laws, new technologies. So I think it really suits someone that's, willing to develop and willing to learn continuously.
Perfect. Thank you very much for this great summary, Patrick. And what should you be doing before university, Tiff, if you could help me with that one?
Yeah, there's probably quite a number of pieces of advice I could give, but in the interest of time, I'll give my top one, which I would say is probably research. I think when you're at your early stages, like if you're in sixth form or your first year of university, I would encourage you to use that as like the kind of building a foundation and your awareness of what a legal career involves. So I know that this session we're talking about the solicitor route, but obviously you can become a barrister. There's what we call knowledge lawyers, which are essentially lawyers that don't work with clients. They just do a lot of behind the scenes like research. Legal tech is a growing area. So I would say, yeah, really do your research into the different areas or areas of the profession. And again, looking at what the nature of the work is, what skills you might need, what different areas of law that there are, that I know Patrick just touched on quite a lot of them, and also what types of law firms are out there, because there's so many, ranging from like your small high street law firm to a global law firm. So yeah, I would say research is probably key and will set you up very well for when it comes to applying for training contracts and things down the line.
Great, thank you, and definitely agree. And Fran, if I could move on to you, and kind of on a similar topic, how important are A-level choices for a future legal career, and what about grades?
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting question, because I think back to when I was like 16, 17, 18 doing my A-levels, and I just remember them being, number one, so hard, and number two, I think everything that you do at the point in your life is the most important thing that you've done up until that point. So I'd say the biggest piece of advice kind of from my perspective is choose A-levels that you're genuinely interested in, because I think it's much easier to kind of do well at subjects that you genuinely are interested in, rather than doing things that you think you need to do. From a kind of AG specific perspective, we removed our minimum requirements for A-levels a few years ago. So from an AG perspective, in terms of how important they are in that sense, our only requirement is I say only, but our sort of education requirement is a 2-1 at uni. So what I would say is pick A-levels that you're interested in, and also I know that you'll probably, if your plan is to go to uni, you'll have some predicted grades that you'll need to meet. So it's kind of, I think, choose what you're most interested in, try and enjoy it, because it's a tough 2 years. And in terms of grades, I think as long as you just keep your head down, work hard, and do yourself proud, I think that's kind of, the only thing you can ask for, really. So yeah, that's my biggest tip on that one.
Great, thank you. And Patrick, for those of the attendees who are sixth form students, do you have to go to university to pursue a career as a solicitor, for example?
Yes, so I know we've got from that poll you did at the start, there's quite a split between obviously A-level students and first years. So there's no sort of right or wrong route, to be honest, and you do end up at the same at the same end point. And it's really about sort of you as an individual. So I guess there's the traditional trainee route, which is doing your law degree, or another subject, and then going into the traditional sort of 2-year traineeship. However, we've also got the solicitor apprenticeship. So that's for those people that potentially don't want to go, and study for 3 or 4 years. And effectively, that's a 6-year course. In my case, with Osborne Clarke, the first 4 of it is basically made up of academic study. So you will get your law degree through doing academic study. That's usually sort of 1 day a week committed to that. And then the other 4 days are through sort of practical learning. So you'll basically be on the job as an apprentice, sitting in the firm. And then at the end of that 4 years, you will then effectively join the traditional traineeship, which is then the SQE study, along with the 2 years of training. I guess that one really suits people for a number of different reasons. If you're more of a practical learner, and you like the balance of practical and academic, it sits really well with that. And also as well for maybe some candidates who don't want the financial pressures that university brings. The apprenticeship's a really good option as well, because more often than not, and in the case of OC, everything is funded by the law firm. So you come out at the end of your 4 years with a degree, and without any of the pressures that maybe university can bring.
Yeah, definitely. And just quickly sticking with you, Patrick, Emily from New Orleans has asked, when do most degree apprenticeships applications open? Specific to...
Sorry, what was the question? I missed that.
When do most degree apprenticeships applications open? So I guess solicitor apprenticeships, etc.
Yeah, so for us, we haven't got our set dates yet this year, but they'll be opening usually around the end of October, and then we'll go through to sort of start of Feb for closing dates.
Cool, thank you. And Tiff, coming back to you, what would you say are the most important things a sixth form and or first year law student should focus on to set themselves up for success?
Yeah, I think an important thing that you can try to do to set yourself up is to try and gain some experience early if you can, as this will ultimately help you determine if law is the right career for you. I know that we're probably going to touch on this a bit more shortly, but there are more and more law firms now that are offering work experience schemes, specifically for 16 to 18-year-olds, and some law firms offer like first year insight schemes as well, work experience. So definitely try and look into those if you can. And then equally, I guess this is probably more relevant for first year students, but make use of the services at university as well. So sign up to the Law Society, try and go along to any kind of law career events. I know that some universities offer volunteering with like legal advice clinics and things like that. So try and make use of services within university as well. But then in the same breath, I would try not to get too bogged down on just getting legal experience, because you'll find that even when you join as an apprentice or a trainee, law firms are not going to expect you to be legal experts and have an abundance of legal knowledge when you join, because that is what you learn on the job. And they're really just looking for well-rounded people that develop those kind of relevant skills that Patrick touched on earlier about, you know, communication, working as part of a team, things like that, that are relevant to being a lawyer. So also try and kind of build on those skills as well, I would say, whether that's through extracurricular activities or if you work part-time. Try and build on those soft skills, I would say, as well.
Great, thank you, Tiff. And moving on sort of to talk about the researching aspect of the qualities and researching employers and discovering your legal interests. Fran, starting with you, what would you say are the best ways to research law firms / legal employers?
Yeah, so I think there's some really good resources out there. So, I mean, Law Careers.net, there's loads of information on that site as well. There's Legal Cheek, which kind of, you know, both summarise sort of law firms in terms of what you're looking for and all that sort of stuff. Because I think I studied law at uni, so I remember kind of being in your guys' shoes, I guess. And I think it can feel quite daunting because there's just a lot of information and it's very hard to sort of figure out where do I start, what do I even look for. So I think like the easiest things to try and focus on is to try and think about what you want out of your training contract. So like thought of a few different things that you can kind of have a look at in terms of trying to figure out which firms are right for you and to really sort of hone in on you know what is going to be right for you, because ultimately when you are submitting applications, you know, it could be for upwards of 5 years that you're kind of, you know, choosing to spend your life at a certain place. So I'd say things to really kind of look out for is what kind of clients do different firms work with? What kind of clients do you want to work with? What practice areas do the firms specialise in? What's the culture like? What's the level of training and support? And also, you know, a bit of a taboo one, but what's the salary? Because that is also important. So there's all those kind of things that you can use to kind of tailor how you focus your research points. But like I say, those websites are kind of a really good place to start. I think LinkedIn is also a really, really good tool. I know from our side of things, from an AG perspective, you know, we post about recent deals that we've done. We post about, you know, sort of things that are going on around the firm to kind of get an idea of the culture and that side of things. So it's a really good way as well of kind of starting to think about, you know, you think of a law firm, but you don't, it's kind of hard to understand what actually goes on behind closed doors. And so I think LinkedIn's a really, really good way of like seeing what firms are doing and things like that. So that'd be my bit of advice on that one.
Great, thank you, Fran. And Daniel, sort of like posing the same question to you. How did you perhaps research firms?
Yeah, just picking up on what Fran said there. I mean, a lot of time it'll be spent attending like your university law fair and meeting people from the firm in person, and that gets you an insight into more of a feel as to what, you know, the people are like to work with in that environment. And equally, just be, you know, you can go online now, and a lot of firms now have like virtual insight days. You know, Clyde Co do. We've also got a dedicated early careers section where you can read up and get a lot of information on the type of work that we do. But equally as well, I mean, a lot of stuff I know you can get from the internet, but sometimes the best way as well is just to ask people. You know, just ask around and see, you know, what's that firm like to work for, or what sort of opportunities are there? Because it's only whenever you really, you know, put a face to someone's name, or you know, actually see people in person is whenever you actually get a feel for what it's really like and not how it's projected to you. That's what I can say. And then just always keep trying as well. So don't give up. I mean, you will get setbacks. People will maybe say that, you know, you might apply to a firm and you mightn't be successful, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're not the right, you know, that it's just not for you. It just means that you're potentially not a good fit for that employer, but you could blend in somewhere else really well and have a really good career.
100%. Thank you, Daniel. And moving on, Tiff, if I come back to you, I think we sort of discussed this. How can students find out what area of the law they're interested in or pursue?
Yeah, again, I think it's through research. So looking at those resources that Fran mentioned, like Legal Cheek, obviously Law Careers, all about law. A lot of them do dedicated sections on the different areas of law. And yeah, just really dig into what is the nature of the tasks that you'll be doing in that practice area, the types of clients that they work with, and do these resonate with you? So, for example, a corporate lawyer will typically work with large companies or businesses, whereas a private client or family lawyer will typically work with an individual. Or if you work in litigation, you may have to go to court quite a lot more than you would in other areas, and work on cases that might go on for a long period of time. Whereas if you work in contract law, you'll be drafting and reviewing a lot of contracts and being a bit more of an advisor. So I think it's just really doing that research and figuring out, does that match with your skill set and interests and things like that. And I think another useful bit of advice is that a lot of law firms might run practice area specific events. So if you can, try and go along to those. And like Daniel said, it's a really good opportunity to actually talk to people at the firm that work in that area, and getting that first-hand knowledge is invaluable, really. So yeah, try and go along to those. And last point I would say, and echoing what Fran said about LinkedIn, that's a really good resource. So you can like connect with people on there that work in a certain practice area. They might post updates on work that they're doing, cases, and you can really get an idea of if that interests you or not. So yeah, I think there's quite a lot of resources that you could use.
Thank you, Tiff. And sticking with you for the next part of that question is, how important is it to know what legal practice area you're interested in when it's time to make applications?
Yeah, I would say that it's probably good to have a general idea of what practice areas interest you, but you don't necessarily need to be like dead set on, I want to practice and like I want to qualify as a solicitor in this area. But it is good to have an interest in certain practice areas, because different law firms specialise in different areas. And obviously, if you end up working there, you need to have an interest in the work that they do. So just to put it into context, at Lewis Silkin, even though we work with within a broad range of areas in commercial law, we are particularly well known for our work in employment law, marketing and advertising, and working with creative industries such as within IP and commercial contracts and things. So we would ideally expect applicants to have an interest in those areas, but equally you shouldn't be too siloed either. And it is really good to have an open mind, because there's certainly been instances where our trainees have ended up qualifying in a seat that they didn't even really express an interest in the first place. So I think it's good to have a general idea and interest in certain areas, but also still be open-minded, I would say.
Great. And Daniel, would you agree? As a trainee, did you have a clear idea of where you wanted to go?
Yeah, I mean, picking up what Tiff said there, I gained experience before applying for my training contract, working in different jobs, mainly as paralegal. And I would strongly recommend. I mean, it's really difficult to get training contracts, so it is, and a great way to get experience and get your foot in the door in a law firm is to maybe consider paralegaling for a while, because it gives you invaluable experience. And again, like I said, it's just gets you a feel for the sort of work that they do. And maybe some firms you might find that no, I don't really like this, and then you could maybe move on, try something else, or else you might find someone that you really like and settle in, and it'll improve your application as well if you do go on to eventually apply for a training contract. But I mean, I would say that you don't need to be 100% sure as to what area of law you want to practice in, because a university I know you might study some modules and you might think, God, this is really interesting, and then whenever you maybe go and try it out in practice, it can be a completely different story. So I would just say to keep an open mind, and again, don't discount other work experience opportunities as well.
Cool, thank you. And Patrick, what opportunities are there for those earlier in their career, like sixth form students, for them to get access to the profession?
Yeah, I think probably on this one it is difficult. Like, it has become more difficult to get your foot in the door, probably. And so a lot of it's down to the individual a lot of the time. So I think probably echoing what's sort of already been said by Fran, by Tiff, is, there's loads of amazing platforms out there, loads of amazing websites that have an absolute ton of information, whether it's, webinars that are recorded, whether it's more sort of gossipy stuff about what it's like to work in a law firm. There's absolutely loads. And then there's maybe the more traditional ones, sort of like chambers, for example, that will give you, if 100% what area you want to work in, they'll give you that real insight into, those particular areas. So I think probably you can't do enough research, and using Google and just Googling as much as possible is a really good way. I think also as well, other social media platforms like Instagram, almost every law firm and TikTok will have a TikTok and Instagram. And while a lot of it isn't that useful, you might get some real nuggets of information and some really sort of important bits to take away with you, and it may sort of sway your decision as to where you want to go. I guess the other thing is attend as many of these events as you can. They're really, really useful. You might find, like I said just before, 90% of it isn't that useful. You know it already, but there may be something additional that you learn from it, and that's sort of how you'll build up your knowledge and gain that sort of further understanding of, commercial law and how law firms work. So I think probably, that's the most important. And then I guess on the sort of flip side, don't be afraid to ask. LinkedIn's there. Drop people messages, whether it's recruiters, whether it's, potentially, I don't know if any of the partners would ever reply, but partners, don't be afraid to do that. And I think as well, when there's the option to ask a question, there's no stupid question. It's, that may be the difference between getting that bit of information that will support your application and not. And then I guess just the final one is, don't underestimate the importance of other work. So while it's not directly linked to working in a law firm or working within the legal sector, when you get to those assessment centres and those application processes, those experience that maybe you get working in, stores or in a cafe or whatever, they are genuinely applicable, and they will really support you when you come to sort of trying to get your foot in the door, basically.
Yeah, and just off the top of that, I see some questions from quite a few keen young individuals who are keen on getting some experience, and they've asked if volunteering or shadowing at law firms could be good opportunities and look good on applications as well.
Yeah, it's not something, unfortunately, that we offer at OC, but I know there are other firms that do it, and also as well, your sort of high street smaller practices may well be something that they offer, and that's just a really good insight just into sort of the day-to-day. So even if you can't get your foot in the door with maybe a firm like OC at this point, those ones around the corner from your house on your local high street are a really good option just to try and get that practical experience early on.
Thank you. And Fran, I think we discussed quite a few resources, but are there any other resources that you would recommend for more of a basic introduction to a career in law?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, between the four of us, I think we have covered pretty much most of everything I was going to cover, to be honest. But I just kind of echo what Patrick said. Like, these events are like, you know, the best things, I think, from a kind of basic introduction side of things to go into. So I know that most firms, I imagine, will probably have like events that they're going to. So for example, on our website, we've got a whole list of events that we're going to be at between now and like the middle of December. And again, comes back to that research point like Tiff was saying. I think it's just finding what firms you think you might be interested in and having a look on their websites and seeing what events they're going to be attending. Again, just keeping an eye out on LinkedIn and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I'll not repeat it because I know we've already kind of spoke about it, but yeah, it basically, yeah, just echo everything that we've kind of said on those other questions.
100%. And moving on to talk a bit more about applications and the recruitment process. Tiff, if I can start with you, what are vacation schemes, apprenticeships, and training contracts for those of our audiences who are not familiar?
Yeah, sure. So a vacation scheme is essentially a short work experience placement at a law firm. It depends what firm you apply to, but typically they tend to be 1 to 2 weeks, and they normally for university students that are in their second and third year and graduates. And throughout the time that you spend there, you are assessed. And again, it does differ from firm to firm as to what assessments you'll do. This does tend to be a really popular option because, again, it's giving you that first-hand insight into a law firm, and actually you get a really good feel for the culture of the firm and things like that. But it isn't necessarily a requirement. There are some firms you'll find that do solely recruit their trainees from a vacation scheme, but there are other firms that will offer vacation scheme and a training contract, so it's just worth doing your research when it comes to applying. And then moving on to a training contract, that is essentially a structured 2-year period of training at a law firm. And you do this after you complete university and any further legal studies like your SQE. It will be structured differently depending on what firm you're at. But just to contextualise it, at Lewis Silkin, the way that we run it, and I think the way that a lot of other firms do, is that you spend time in 4 different departments for 6 months at a time. So you essentially rotate every 6 months. And then at the end of that training contract, you'll be a qualified solicitor. And then moving on to apprenticeships. So these have increased in popularity massively over the last few years. And most firms now offer it as an alternative route to qualifying as a solicitor compared to the going to university. There's different apprenticeship options available within law, which I'll cover shortly. But essentially, what an apprenticeship is the combination of work and study. So you will work whilst also completing your studies at the same time. So the most popular apprenticeship option that most firms offer now is the solicitor apprenticeship. And this is open to school leavers who have completed their A-levels. So this is typically a 6-year programme where you will spend 1 day per week studying and then 4 days working and gaining that practical legal experience. And then at the end of that, you would have gained your LLB law degree and also completed the SQE. And then there are some firms, not all, that also offer a graduate solicitor apprenticeship. And this is for people that have already gained a degree, whether that's in law or another subject. And essentially, that's just a 2-year programme where you work but also study the SQE. So a bit similar to a training contract, I guess. But the main difference is that graduate apprenticeship is open to those who've already got a degree, whereas the solicitor apprenticeship is for A-level students.
Perfect. Thank you so much for the summary. Patrick, how early should students start thinking about vacation schemes or training contracts, and when do they need to start making applications?
Yeah, so probably in short, as early as possible is the answer. So I think probably my best bit of advice is just to get as organised as possible. So make yourself a list of all the firms that you are interested in. On all of our websites, we'll have the opening and closing dates, and probably I'd recommend just making a list of when all those deadlines are to submit your application. Generally, it's over this sort of winter period, so sort of between October and the end of January is the real sort of key period for applications for VAC scheme and training contract. So I'd sort of then just start getting yourself organised in terms of when you're going to write each individual application, because in reality, probably the average candidate writes, I don't know, anywhere from sort of 5 to 15 applications for different firms. So generally this sort of winter period is the most important. In terms of sort of preparing yourself for it, I think what you need to do is really spend some time putting your sort of either your CV or your sort of experience together. In terms of the application questions, often there will be a long form answer on the application form, so you really need to spend some time, just like you would with coursework or anything like that, refining it, editing it, reviewing it, just to make sure it's what, the sort of quality that you want to submit. And then in terms of for the apprentices, so generally the application forms are slightly shorter form, what our one is in our case, and really it's a little bit more less focused on your sort of experience and commercial awareness, and maybe more your sort of motivations and drive for submitting an application for apprenticeship. So you just want to spend some real time, preparing those. And like I said, you can't start preparing sort of, there's no bad time to start preparing for it, basically.
Great, thank you, Patrick. And Daniel, moving on to talk a bit more about the trainee experience. What's the trainee solicitor at a law firm, and what do they do?
Yeah, a trainee solicitor, your day-to-day stuff would be mainly assisting other fee earners in the firm with, could be doing research or reviewing documentation, attending court hearings, meetings with clients, preparing things as well for our insurer clients. We've MI data, which is more like general administrative tasks as well. So a lot of it, you just have to have very good time management skills in order to prioritize what's important and what can maybe wait a couple of days. And it's just having that skill to be able to juggle everything, really. But equally, it's having the ability to be able to put your hand up and say, I'm too busy here. Can somebody else maybe assist? So you don't have to feel like as if you have to address everybody's queries. I mean, you just have to be good at managing time and just knowing what's important and what isn't important. I know it's quite hard to describe, but it's only whenever you try it out, it's whenever you know what it's like.
Yeah, and sort of kind of drawing back to the applications part. So how can aspiring lawyers prepare for a vacation scheme / training contracts application?
Yeah, you just prepare by drawing on all your past experiences and working in. I mean, if you have had to work in different jobs, any experience you got doing that, whether maybe dealing with someone who was challenging or maybe didn't particularly agree with something that you said, how you managed it, how you conducted yourself. Also draw upon your hobbies and interests, because it's not, your academics are very important, but equally what you do outside of work as well can set you apart from other candidates, and it just also makes you more of a unique, well-rounded person, as opposed to being someone who's maybe just, very standardized, and it's just everybody's different essentially and has different experiences, and that's what makes you unique and would benefit your application.
Great, thank you. And we've sort of discussed the work experience on opportunities, but Fran, if I could come back to you with a question. What opportunities are there about your firm? Are there any specific for first years law students? And also, are there any similar events that sixth form students perhaps could attend?
Helps if I go off mute, doesn't it? So we do have kind of coming in terms of like a first year specific angle. We have an insight day, so it's a virtual insight day, which basically if you're in your first year of uni, you can apply to, and basically by coming on that sort of day, you can speak to some partners from the firm. Our early careers team will do some sessions with you. You'll speak to a variety of trainees, and just the idea behind the day is just to kind of get a feel for what AG is like. And there's loads of opportunities to ask questions and really kind of dig deep and kind of get behind the curtain a little bit with it, and kind of, you know, have a good opportunity to speak to people that you might ordinarily not have the chance to. So in terms of like first year specific, there's those sort of things. I think aside from that, I know I touched on this earlier, but we do have loads of events that we attend, but we also work really closely with quite a few unis kind of across the country. So I think Tiff touched on this earlier, but I think, yeah, just to reiterate, just getting involved with your law society or even speaking to the career service just to see, because typically what happens is if we're doing any events with universities, we will publicise those at the unis. And so I think kind of keeping an eye out for those as well would be great. We do also have a 4-part series. It's called Discover AG, and one of those events or sessions is on applications. So it's on like an application masterclass. So how to make sure to prepare properly for applications and things like that as well, which I think is really useful. In terms of from a sixth form perspective, I would say we don't necessarily have any kind of specific events, but I would say to kind of look on our events page, because even if you are in sixth form, there's nothing stopping you from kind of attending anything that you think you might be interested in. So our kind of events are a little bit more focused on first years, but still there are opportunities for sixth formers to get involved with lots of stuff as well.
Yeah, and if anyone else wants to chip in about their firm, please do.
Yeah, I would just like to point out as well that Clyde Co also offers virtual insight days as well, and there's a lot of useful resources on our early careers section on the website, which would be very helpful, and strongly recommend people to look at that.
So same for us. I mean, you probably find most law firms all do the same kind of thing, to be honest. But we have an insight. Well, we call it Insight Day, but it's over 2 days, and it runs across all three of our offices, and it's a mix of sort of virtual and in-person events. And again, much like Fran said, it's just around learning a little bit about what we do from the legal side, but also some employability sessions, and also a little bit of networking as well. So you can start to build up a network if you're interested in OC. So that's, a really good opportunity, and you can make an application online. And then sort of if you're, on the slightly earlier end, so apprentices, you are also welcome to come to our open evenings, and also as well, if you've got any of your parents or your support network that want to come with you, they're also more than welcome to come along, because I think my mum would probably want to have had some input into what I was going to do. So they're definitely open as well to apprentice candidates as well.
Sorry, just to jump in as well. We don't offer currently any insight like events or programs for first years specifically, but we do have a work experience program that's open to 16 to 18-year-olds that are in sixth form. So we run free 4-day placements throughout the year. So in April, July and October. So details about those can be found on our website. So yeah, they're open to sixth form students. And then I think just another point that's popped into my head is that there are also quite a lot of firms that do virtual work experience programs as well, which is another option, and I guess a bit more accessible. And yeah, just to echo what others have said, we run a number of events that both sixth form students and first years could come along to as well if they're interested.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I'm just conscious of time, so I think we can move on to the diversity recruitment section. And as I've seen some of the questions, I think that'll be quite relevant to people. I'm going to pose this question to all of you, and you can chip in if you'd like. What actions are firms taking to improve access to the profession? Why is it important? Patrick, if I can start with you, maybe.
Yeah, sure. So we're doing quite a lot of work around this at the moment. Obviously, it generally, traditionally is quite restrictive, the legal sector. And so we're really working hard with this, and we have a whole responsible business team who sit within the firm who are, looking at this to try and improve our diversity and opportunity. I guess in terms of what we're sort of practically doing, so for those who are going to make an application, when it comes to your academic achievements, we use a system called RARE. So effectively, it contextualizes your academic results. So if you, for example, have massively outperformed the sort of average of your school, we'll be able to see that. And vice versa, if there have been any challenges while you were, during your academic period as well, there's lots of opportunity in our application form to provide us with details around that. So whether that's, you were caring or you were working or you had sort of extenuating circumstances, these all sort of add into your application and obviously support, the application to us. So that's sort of what we're doing from that side. And then I guess what OC is kind of really good at is we have a whole lot of networks within the firm. So around pride, around gender, around social diversity and mobility as well. And the sort of idea of those networks is they have their focuses and they're really trying to sort of drive forward their programs of change, and they will feed into the recruitment programs with that. So often, a lot of the partners that you'll meet during our processes will be members of those committees and have that in the back of their mind. So hopefully those sort of combination of things are really we're really starting to see the results from.
Great, thank you, Patrick. And does anyone else want to chip in? Tiff, I saw you unmuted.
Yeah, I was just going to say we pretty much do the same at Lewis Silkin as well, so I won't repeat what Patrick said, but just some additional things that we have been working on is trying to do more outreach at schools in socially deprived areas, and then we also work with those schools to mentor their sixth form students, so just meeting with them monthly throughout the academic year to give careers advice, CV advice, things like that. So trying to improve our outreach at an earlier stage as well, not just like for trainees, for example.
Yeah, I think to build on what Patrick and Tiff said, so we do exactly the same. So we work with RARE as well through our recruitment process, and our recruitment process is also blind, so we don't know name, details, anything, no personal details of any of our candidates until we get to the assessment centre stage. So that's kind of things that we do in terms of from an application perspective. We have got a few social mobility schemes that we kind of do as well. So we work with the Law Scott Foundation in Scotland, and then we work with BPP in England to kind of do similar things. So in England, it's called the Legal Access Scheme. and in Scotland we just call it the Law Scot Foundation Scheme. But it basically allows candidates who maybe don't quite meet the educational requirements or anything like that through the typical process to apply via a different route and attend our placement scheme or vacation scheme and obtain a training contract kind of through that way as well. So there are a couple of kind of positive things that we've seen, and we've seen a lot of good outcomes from that. We see a lot of good candidates that come through that way, which is really positive. And then we also work with the 10,000 Black Interns Foundation, and we offer a 6-week scheme in our London office for interns to join us. Not 10,000 interns, thankfully, every single time. IT's like 10,000 laptops, and I'm like, no, fear not. So we have 2 or 3 interns that come and join us for 6 weeks, and again, just gives them access to the corporate world and to experience life in a corporate law firm. So there are a couple of other things that we do as well. And then, like Patrick said, we've got our diversity networks as well, which are really great. And we kind of have all of these events and we bring clients along, and it's great. I feel like I've learned so much through the kind of networks and stuff, which is really positive as well. So yeah.
Thank you. And Daniel, did you have anything to add? Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, just to add that Clyde Co is very much the same. One of our core values is to celebrate difference, and throughout the firm as well, there's a wide range of diversity networks for everybody to get involved in and promote diversity throughout the firm, because we believe that's part of our success.
Perfect, thank you. And just while we still have some time, we can quickly discuss some important topics that aspiring lawyers should potentially would want to know about. Tiff, if I could start with you. I think we briefly mentioned SQE, or the solicitor's qualifying exam. So what is the SQE, and what do students need to know about it?
I'll be honest, it's probably a question that law firms are still asking themselves as well, because the SQE has been an absolute minefield to figure out. But essentially, it is the new route to qualification now as a solicitor, and is replacing the LPC. So there's essentially 2 parts to the SQE that you need to pass. So there's SQE1, which tests your functioning legal knowledge in the form of multiple choice assessments. And that's probably one of the biggest differences compared to the LPC, where the assessments were a lot different. They weren't multiple choice. And then there's SQE2, which is those legal practical skills, so advocacy, drafting, things like that. And these assess through written and oral assessments. And then along with the SQE, you have to complete 2 years of qualifying work experience, which is designed to replace the 2-year training contract that's been mentioned. So this is designed to be more accessible. So for example, you can do that work experience in up to 4 different organisations, not just one firm. And you can do it either before, during, or after you take your SQE exams. But you will find in practice, particularly with probably the top 100 to 200 UK law firms, and those law firms in the City of London, you'll find are sticking to that traditional model of the 2-year training contract after you do your SQE exams. This is mainly because with those kind of top firms, the training is very structured and specific to each firm. And each firm has their own requirements that they're looking for from trainees in order to qualify. So in their perspective, them being able to oversee your training via that training contract gives them a clearer idea of if you've met those relevant requirements to qualify. So in practice, you'll find that a lot of law firms still do that training contract model. But like I said, the SQE is still very much a learning process for a lot of firms. So the best thing you can do really is when you get to that stage of thinking about applying and doing the SQE is just look at firms' websites and see what their approach is, because firms will approach it differently.
Perfect. Thank you, Tiff. And quickly moving on to talk about AI. There's been quite a lot of talk about AI in the recent year. Patrick, would you be happy to talk a bit more about, AI in general at law firms and like how it's impacted the way recruiters review candidate applications or use or how candidates are, for example, using AI to write applications?
Yeah, sure. So I think probably everyone's. I mean, I spend most of my day putting my emails into ChatGPT, to be fair, but and it does sound better than me. But I think is quite serious when it comes to sort of applications. So in terms of, I guess I'll speak from sort of our perspective. We we admit that it's there and we acknowledge that it's there, and we appreciate that people may want to use it. I think what my key sort of advice would be is just make sure you really understand how to use it. So when it comes to writing applications, I would really recommend, and I would say it all needs to be your own original thought and your own ideas. GPT AI doesn't work for sort of the creation of ideas, and what will happen is often your application will end up looking like someone else's, because someone else would have done the same as you and they would have got the same result. Kind of like Daniel said sort of earlier on, you'll lose that individuality of you as a candidate by putting it into GPT. So it might be great for sort of sense checking structure, or maybe is there a better way to write something? That may be how you want to use it. But in terms of that original sort of ideas, it's absolutely not what we want to see. And like I said, will really remove your personality, your individuality, and your motivations. I guess from the flip side, in terms of how we use it, we don't use AI to review any applications. We do it all sort of by hand. So we are reading, all of your applications and all of the long form answers that you write. So again, I think you should have that confidence that we are reading what you are putting into it as well. So that's from our side where we kind of stand with it. I would say some firms do use it for applications, especially early on, and so it is really important to still make sure that you get those keywords, those sort of key points in there, because that may be important when certain firms are reviewing applications. So just to make sure you understand what the question the firm are asking you, and that the content is related to that, because that can be quite important, especially if AI is reviewing your application.
Great, thank you, Patrick. And does anyone else have anything to add? Fran, Tiff, or Daniel?
I would just say that Patrick's covered it there pretty comprehensively.
Yeah, I was just going to echo that and just say that obviously firms might have a different approach, but for us at Lewis Silkin, given that the use of AI is encouraged internally in the firm and we do use an AI tool, it's fine to use it in your application. But like Patrick said, I think it's all about using it in the appropriate way. So within the firm, it's intended to be integrated into your work to enhance it or streamline it, and not to be relied on fully. So I guess that same kind of guideline can be applicable to when you're doing your applications as well. So not relying and copying and pasting your answers, making sure that you really go in and look at the phrasing. Is it phrased in a way that's natural to you, and things like that. So yeah, just using it as a starting point, I think, would be my main piece of advice, not to rely on it.
Perfect, thank you. And just conscious of time again, I think it's about time we wrap up. So I think it's always nice to finish with one piece of advice from each panelist too. And while the panelists do that, I'll pop a final poll on the screen. So Patrick, if we can start with you, please, with one piece of final advice do you have for the attendees?
Yeah, I think probably my main bit of advice is to just stay resilient. It's a really tough process, and it can be quite tiring, quite demotivating, but the end goal is worth it. And so put the time, put the effort in, and hopefully you end up with, the result that you want.
Great. And Daniel?
Yeah, like Patrick said, my key piece of advice would be just to be resilient. Don't give up. Believe in yourself. You are good enough, and just try and use any experience that you get to benefit your application, and any hobbies and interests you have outside of work as well are a definite plus. And just because I didn't come from a straight law background. My undergraduate degree was in psychology, and I converted to law after university. So I felt that experience was advantageous for me. So I would just say that everybody has a different route, and just be persistent.
Thank you. And Fran?
Yeah, I think I'd echo what Patrick and Daniel said. I think my bit of advice would be, we quite often see through the application process, whether that be on the application form or in interviews, that sometimes candidates can say things that they think we want to hear. So they kind of try and predict and say what they think is the right things. But I think my biggest piece of advice is just remain true to yourself, because the one thing that we want to do is get to know you, and the only way to do that is, for you to let your personality shine through and kind of, not try and guess what we want to hear. We just want to hear what you have to say, kind of thing. And I think just remain really steadfast in the fact that, like, this might sound a bit like maybe a bit cheesy, but like what you say matters, because I think it can feel quite daunting sometimes when you kind of like step through the doors of a law firm. So I think, just stay resilient, be yourself, and I'm sure all of you will have a lot of success.
And Tiff?
Yeah, I would completely echo what everyone has said, but I think my main piece of advice is to not put too much pressure on yourself. And I think with the nature of the industry, it is a competitive industry, and I think a lot of people feel pressure that they need to have it all figured out and you need to get a training contract straight away. But I just want to emphasize that there is time. Like Daniel said, he didn't necessarily go straight into a law degree and then do a training contract. People sometimes take a gap year, and there's no rush. And I think when you're doing your A-levels, they are stressful as it is. When you go to university, that's a big adjustment in itself. So I think, try and not put too much pressure on yourself and think about your well-being, and actually try and enjoy whether you go to university or end up doing an apprenticeship. Just try and enjoy it.
Great, thank you. And thank you to everyone who answered the poll on the screen. I think the main takeaway was about early research, which is, I think, sort of what we mentioned at the start as well. So it's a good way to circle back to that. And before you head off, just another reminder to the attendees that we'll be sending out a link containing the recorded session, so please keep an eye out for that. There will also be a survey popping up once this masterclass has ended, so please fill that in to let us know how you've enjoyed today and what other topics you would like us to see cover in the future. Thank you very much once again to our panelists and to everyone attending today. We look forward to seeing you again next time. And remember that all our masterclasses can be found on Law Careers Net's events page. Thank you all, and we'll see you again.